Let me start in October of 2015, which is when we embarked on this road together, if I can put it that way. Those were very dark days for us and very dark days for you. Some of you will remember that in October and November 2015, we faced a report from a council officer which was voted through and in respect of which our then lawyer was allowed a mere 3 minutes by a very weak chairman of overview and scrutiny, I have to say, and a report which, to misquote Franklin Roosevelt, will live forever in infamy, because it will. And as far as many of you were concerned, the airport was finished at that point, November 2015. We regrouped. We did research, we found things out that maybe we should have known before. And I remember coming back to a meeting with SMAA in, I think it was February 2016. We had, as I say, regrouped, we had looked again at the evidence, we had spoken to new investors, we had got ourselves organised, and we were ready to start the magical mystery tour that is the development consent order process. And I have to say that the energy that we got from the meeting we had with SMA at that time helped us enormously when we came to actually rebuilding our strategy. You've no idea how important it is when you're working on something like this, when you've been effectively kicked in the teeth, as we were back in the autumn of 2015, to know that actually there is a very large, well-informed, representative group of people who want this to happen. And, you know, I really need to say, without that was a turning point for us. It really was. So, we embarked on the development consent order process, and as you know, it is a process which allows for a government agency, the planning inspectorate, to grant planning permission and a compulsory acquisition order in respect of projects which are of national significance, infrastructure projects, roads, wind farms, nuclear power stations, whatever, and airports. We embarked on that road. Now, it's ironic in a way. We have been going even longer than the Brexit discussions. The referendum was in June. In 2016, we were 4 months ahead of them. Who will get to the finishing line sooner is still up for grabs, I suggest, but there we are. In the interim, in the whole of 2016 and the whole of 2017, and most of 2018 now, have, as you know, spent £9 million on the project. A lot of people have said, well, where did the money go? Was it mainly spent on wining and dining and giving presents to elected members? Well, it wasn't. Not all, it was spent on the process. And I'd just like to say something about the process today because it's important. We live in times when government at all levels, sometimes rightly, is held up in disrepute and disregarded and so on. I have to say to you that this DCO process is a process which has integrity, it has transparency. If you really want to read every word of our 11,000 pages of material, it's all there for you to see. There are no secrets, nothing is hidden, it's all there. There are tests that we have to meet. They're quite tough tests, to the extent, as some of you will remember, that back in May, the inspector had said to us, look, there are a few issues with your application that we're not comfortable with. We'd like you to strengthen it and refocus here and there, which we duly did, and the result was acceptance in August of 2018, acceptance for examination. And that's a very important point to make, because there are some people out there who seem to think that this process is a farce, that it's a fix, that, you know, goodness knows. It really is a process that has integrity. If you think about it, When the government in 2008 and then subsequently in 2011 finalised the development consent order process, they said, we are going to do something fundamental. We are taking from local authorities the power to give planning permission for major infrastructure, and we are giving it to a government agency, ultimately accountable to the Secretary of State. That was a major shift that hadn't been done in this country before, but the protections that were written in, the issues that have to be addressed, are all so thorough that I would say to you confidently, we have spent more time and more money on this DCO than Thanet District Council has been able to spend on its local plan. And that's no disrespect to Thanet, that is the way in which the DCO process is set up. And it's important that you should know that, you know. So it is a process that has integrity, it is a process that is absolutely thorough, where no stone is left unturned. A local plan is normally overseen by one inspector. They've decided on 2 inspectors for Thanet, as you know. We can only guess at the reasons. As far as we're concerned, and this process is concerned, we have 4 inspectors who've been appointed to oversee it all. So you can rest assured that we won't be able to get away with anything. Nothing of public interest or to do with public health or public protection will be missed. That's the process that we're now embarked on. So just to say something about the timetable, it looks as though the examination process will begin towards the end of January. We're not exactly sure when, we haven't got a date yet, but it starts with a series of public meetings on 3 consecutive days. That's the way they like to do these things these days, so that an invitation, and we have to send invitations out, is sent to every single organisation or person that's registered an interest in the DCO process, and a venue is found that is large enough to accommodate those people. The process of evaluating venues is also going on, and there is a rule that the venue has to be within 10 kilometres of the site. In East Kent, that's the challenge. It's beginning to look as though the authorities will elect to have the initial hearings in the large hall of the Winter Gardens, because it's the only place that can accommodate 1,000 plus people. We don't know yet, but it's beginning to look that way. That will involve additional expenditure, again by us, because the rules say that there has to be technology in the venue that can support live streaming of what goes on so people can follow it at home, that there's good strong Wi-Fi connection and cellular telephone connection, which there isn't at the Winter Gardens at the moment. Plus there have to be proper arrangements for retiring rooms for the inspectors and for interested parties too. Plus disabled access and all that kind of thing. So there will be 3 days in which the inspectors will listen to the views of those people who've registered an interest. The process will then stop as far as hearings are concerned, and the inspectors will go away and formulate a series of questions, written questions, to which we mainly will have to supply the answers, but some of the questions will be directed to other bodies. It could be the Environment Agency or Thanet or KCC, who knows. The key thing is you have only 28 days in which to answer the questions. So it's a very, very strict timetable. The questions can then be followed with supplementary questions, all dealt with in writing, but the inspectors then have the discretion to hold further hearings further down the line to determine certain questions that they feel are worthy of hearing from people in person. But this is not a sort of set piece, cross-examination, counsel on this side and counsel on that side and all that kind of thing. It's not that. These hearings are much more informal and are run by the inspectors themselves rather than by lawyers. That process will take 6 months, so that will take us through to July. There's then a further 3 months maximum for the inspectors to write their report, and then at the end of it there's a further 3 months maximum for the Secretary of State to write his currently report. which effectively takes us to the end of January 2020 for the final decision. That's where we are in final terms. I know a lot of you have registered, and you have the right to attend, and I understand it's standard practice for the inspectors to allocate a seat or seats at the table for those who represent major organisations, whether they're for or against. What distinguishes our project from almost all other BCOs is that we have a huge number of people who are supporting us. In most BCOs, they're coping with 90% of opposition, frankly, whether it's the Lower Thames Crossing or a nuclear power station. The one in Anglesey at Wilver, which is starting in early January, which has actually resulted in ours being pushed back a little bit, is a good example of that, where the opposition is huge. So we have to be conscious of the issues, but also reflect on the fact that we do have much more support. And I made the point here really that we've produced a massive material, some of it very technical material, on all aspects of the project. Environmental, technical, construction, you name it. The role I suggest of this organisation, for you to decide, of course, is to somehow find a way to communicate to the inspectors why it is that you want the airport to be reinstated, what you think the airport can bring to this area, which is lacking at the moment. That seems to me to be the major issue. And I know it's a bone of contention here and there, but that primarily is it. No one is expecting you to go out and produce learned treatises on air quality or diesel, aviation fuel particulates in the sky and so on. That would be unfair. It is merely to get across, if you can, the kind of the views of the community as to, if that's what you think, why this should happen and what it can do for the area. So that's basically the timetable and and where we are with the process. Some specific things for you. First of all, noise and night flights. I need to say this again and again and again, but I will, so if those of you who've heard it before, forgive me. There are no plans, and there will not be scheduled night flights. And when we refer to night flights, we're talking about in or out, no scheduled night flights. However, we have asked for some flexibility for the nighttime slots. And there is a good reason for that. I'll start with the passengers. Now, although this is primarily going to be a cargo airport, there will be passenger planes. We've already mentioned the name of Ryanair, and that remains the case. And a low-cost carrier like Ryanair depends on keeping its aircraft in the sky for as long as possible. You aim, if you're running an airline like Ryanair, to keep your aircraft in the sky for about 13 hours a day if you can. When they're sitting on the ground, they're not earning any money for you. They're a dead asset. And therefore, the start and end of the working day is vital. If we have 3 or 4 or maybe 5 aircraft based at Mansfield, they will all have to leave between 6 and 7 in the morning, because they will all be heading for mainland Europe, and they will all lose an hour as soon as they cross into mainland Europe. That's a fundamental rule for low-cost airlines. So you lose that hour, which means and if you were going to look at the departure details for other airports, I've got two written out here, I think, yes. Stansted has 25 departures between 6 and 7 in the morning, all low-cost carriers heading for Europe. Gatwick is the same. Southend, who recently got EasyJet to go there and are getting Ryanair there next summer, they currently have 3 departures between 6 and 7 in the morning. When Ryanair go there next summer, they'll probably have 6, 1 for each aircraft. We'll be in the same position. That's why we need the morning slots. The evening slots for passengers is another story. When an aircraft returns from Europe in the evening, of course, it gains an hour. So you will find that the scheduled arrival times for most incoming passenger flights are up to 10 o'clock at night, no later. However, many of you will have experienced delays, especially in the summer period, which can be caused by bad weather or air traffic controllers strikes or goodness knows what. And the need to accommodate a late arrival is paramount. So typically you get an aircraft that's stuck in Mallorca, it's 3 hours late because there have been problems all day. It's not going to get back into Manston until 1 o'clock in the morning, but it needs to be back in Manston because it's going to leave Manston the next morning at 6:15. We have to let that aircraft come in. Of course we do. That's the best example I can give you of why you need flexibility at night. The other thing to say is that an inbound Ryanair plane, a 737 MAX, is just about the quietest there is. Inbound is half the noise of outbound. So that's passenger flights. But no departures at night. There are no departures at night. If you look at the schedules of any airport, they don't do nighttime departures. Now, as far as cargo is concerned, it's the same story. You've heard this so many times. We will be building parking stands galore. There will be lots of room in the daytime for as many cargo planes to come in as is needed. However, inbound cargo flights are often late. Simply because they're in the control of the airport that they're leaving, and especially with airports in East Africa, from which a lot of the perishables will be coming in. But I don't select them for special treatment. There are others where simply there are delays. The aircraft might have a problem, there might be a problem loading it, whatever. So again, you get a call from a carrier saying, sorry, we're running late, we can't get in until 1 o'clock in the morning, or 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, now the airport's response to that is going to be interesting. If that's the third time this month this has happened, the response is likely to be, sorry, you can't come. You can't come till 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. You keep doing this to us. But if it's genuine, and remember the airport then has the problem that the night shift will be finishing at 2300, so there's no one manning the airport, staffing the airport during those hours, so you're going to then have people staying on, it's an expense and a cost. So, in limited circumstances, if a cargo plane is arriving late, you will let it in, but subject to all those caveats that I've mentioned. And certainly not to let them make a habit of it. But the difficulty, of course, is that if an aircraft is carrying perishables, where else can it go? And there wouldn't be anywhere else in the UK that would let it land. That's something we have to manage. It's the same point with aircraft, with cargo aircraft. Inbound aircraft make half the noise of outbound aircraft. Outbound aircraft are the most noisy. On takeoff is much noisier than landing. So we will allow, in some circumstances, late-running inbound cargo aircraft to land, but there will be no nighttime departures from Manston of cargo, none at all. We will not schedule it, we will not allow it. And that's as clear a statement as you can make. We have, some of you have been following this, we've created a mathematical structure called quota count, which actually says this is the amount of noise you're allowed at night, and if you exceed it, you lose any right to land anything at night, even if it's a Ryanair plane running late. We've agreed to submit ourselves to that. There will be a discussion about the level at which you set that, because the QC count is the quietest 737 MAX has a QC count of 0.25. The noisiest old Mike Kruger departing 747-200s had a QC count of 16. So you can see there's a huge range. Modern 747-800s operated by people like Cargolux have a QC count of outbound 4, inbound 2. It's a logarithmic scale, what that tells you is that if we allowed a couple of arrivals in a month of 747s with a QC count of 2 each, that wouldn't make much impression on our QC count limit. But if we allowed 4 with a QC count of 4 to come in, that would give us a problem. So it's a discipline that will be forced on us. We accept that, but we cannot be in a position where we cannot allow anything. Because if we say to Ryanair, sorry, the example of the plane running late at Mallorca, you will not be able to come back to Manston, they'll say, well, we won't come then, because we can't run an operation like that. It just doesn't work. And that's the reality of the situation. There's one further thing to be said about night noise, which has to do with fixed electrical ground power. Some of you will be aware that you will have seen mobile units that are used to power up aircraft when they're sitting on the ground, so to fuel the air conditioning and the lighting and so on. Traditionally they were diesel, and some of them were very noisy. We've committed to installing electricity and having fixed electrical ground power, except in the direst emergencies. So another annoying source of noise for some people living close to the airfield will be eliminated. And then finally, the same point about engine testing. There have been times in the past where the operators of aircraft have been allowed to circle at the end of the runway and apparently fire them up and leave them running for a long time. That won't be permitted. And to anyone who doesn't want to accept that, there's guidance about that in the Civil Aviation Authority operating manual, which will also be imposed on us. And that's perhaps something else I should mention, because we're not just dealing with the development consent order process, we're also dealing with the CAA, whose prime objective, of course, is safety and security, quite rightly, but who are also interested in conditions on the ground, avoiding noise, avoiding undue disturbance to the public. So there are all these conditions built in, and it's not as though, unlike the planning inspector, the CAA inspect, and they give you a license, and if you break the license, you can lose your license. So there are a whole series of things that you have to comply with. A few other things. Tourism, which is emerging as a subject, and I think will be discussed at some length in the various questions and analysis. It has been suggested, as some of you will know, that flying freighters over Ramsgate will hurt Ramsgate's tourism industry, visitor industry. I think it's not my place to comment on that, except to say that inbound Ryanair flights will have Spanish, German, Italian, whatever, people coming to the UK, and some of them will stay here and spend their money here. And the statistics, these are very conservative statistics that Sally Dixon has produced for us. We think the Ryanair plan will amount to about 1 million passengers. That's roughly in line with what they're going to be doing in Southend next year. Well, 1 million passengers, based on their normal pattern of inbound and outbound, probably represents 800,000 going out and 200,000 coming in from Spain or wherever it is. Those people, some of those people will be acceptable, go straight up to London, but a lot of them won't. And there is an opportunity for East Kent to market itself in those points of departure. It may not be Thanet, it could be Canterbury, it could be Dover, but it will be East Kent. And to my way of thinking, those are international tourists who would not otherwise come here. And any alleged damage to the cafe culture of Ramsgate, I would suggest, will be more than redressed by the impact of new tourists here. Jobs, well again very quickly, I know some of you will have read the numbers, but the reality is if we achieve our target of 10,000 cargo units a year, that will require a direct workforce of between 2,000 and 3,000, not to mention the indirect workforce. The big challenge for us is going to be training and qualification. We've given a commitment to employ as many local people as we can, and that's not just out of altruism, it's out of actually sheer necessity, because if we're importing 3,000 people from North Kent or East Sussex or whatever, that's going to give us a problem in terms of getting them here and parking their cars and all that kind of thing. So we need as many local people as possible. And to do that, we are going to have to train as many local people as possible, which in turn means working with Canterbury Christchurch University, East Kent College, and other education institutions to produce the necessary courses and qualifications that will work for everyone. And that has started, the process of dialogue has started, and it will continue. And it's an essential part of what we're doing. We cannot do otherwise. There is a skill shortage down here. There's a skill shortage all over the country, if we're honest. We have a specific set of skills that we will need at this airport, ranging from the lowest paid to the highest paid, and we've got to be able to meet those. There are airports, we've been told by the CAA, in other parts of the UK, that are having to operate restricted operating hours because they can't get the staff to operate the full time. So that's something else that we need to face. Rail freight is another thing that I'd just like to mention to you. We've not mentioned it before. We have now started a dialogue with Network Rail. We have a railway line very close to the airport. We have forecast additional truck movements resulting from the airport's growth, and that they could reach 400 or 500 a year, which is a lot. We accept that. Sorry, a day, which is a lot. So the logic for us is to put as much of that on rail. I mean, that works for us, it works for the operators, it works for the freight forwarders. If you can get your stuff into London for onward transmission to the rest of the country by an hour by rail, why would you send it by lorry? Plus, you have the fact that with increasing controls on diesel emissions and so on, the acceptability of lorries running up and down congested motorways will be questionable in the years to come. We've had a very favourable response from Network Rail, not going to say it's going to happen tomorrow, but in 5 years' time, it could well happen. We think that's a very sensible and logical solution to a very difficult problem. And then just finally, to give you a sense of what we're currently doing, and this returns to my opening theme, the integrity of the process. Some of you will know that last week we had an intensive session of our entire team with our QC, with our leading barrister, a guy called Michael Humphreys, going through the issues that we will face at the examination. And this goes back to the integrity of the process. So, I'll just give you a feel for what we have been doing, working on, and what we will be working on now. So, first of all, we've signed a planning performance agreement with Thanet District Council and with Dover and with Canterbury. That is normal in these things. It's the way things are these days. They do the work, they do some work, and we pay for it. They will appoint noise consultants. It's a firm called Ricardo. We will pay for them because they don't have the expertise to take the right level of advice in relation to noise disturbance down here. It's right that they should do that, and it's right that we should pay for it. That work is about to start and will progress over the next 2 or 3 months. Let's look at things that, and that will include issues to do with night noise and noise disturbance. The insulation policy that we included in the documents that we filed, which talked about an allowance of £4,000 to insulate a home against noise. There are questions that have to be answered. Why is it 4,000, not 3,000 or 5,000? We chose 4,000 because the nearest comparable one was Luton, which is 3,000. We felt we should err on the side of generosity, but equally, there are other issues such as what form of insulation should it be? There's no national standard for this. This is one of the difficulties. There is no national policy on it. So we have to try and develop something which is a bit more specific. There's also the issue of schools that are affected by noise of aircraft coming over, and there are some schools in the flight path, we accept that. Now, yes, you can insulate a school, but of course, children play outside, they spend time outside, they play sports, you can't insulate against that. So all you can do in that case is to compensate them in some other way. That's what other airports tend to do. So we will have to develop a policy for that, so that schools who are affected can say, well, at least we get aircraft over every day, but in return we've got whatever it may be in terms of a new facility or something that we've contributed. Let's think. There's a whole list. I mean, there's a huge list of things that we're doing, all of which is about sharpening up and being more specific about the commitments we've made. We want people to understand what will be in the CAA Aerodrome Manual. This is all dry, boring stuff, but the CAA Aerodrome Manual is a very, very important document because it will be the protection that everyone will get as a result of the airport reopening. The Northern Grass Road, the Northern Grass 116 acres, which some of you will be familiar with, there was a plan for KCC to run part of its relief road through the Northern Grass. It doesn't work for us. It took some time to persuade KCC that you can't actually have relief road between the middle of an airport. It's why the M25 doesn't run through Heathrow. It states the obvious, really. But anyway, thanks to an intervention from a friendly county councillor sitting over there, we've now got some traction with KCC. The route will not go through the Northern Grass. A new route running further north and further west has been established, but we have to look at the implications of that route, and every new road has implications for residents who live close by, plus the thorny question of who's going to pay for it, and when will it get built. We're going to do a bit more work on that between now and when we go ahead. We've also undertaken a noise survey in Pegwell Bay to obtain background readings for golden plover, did I pronounce it correctly? Plover, sorry. And we need to survey community receptors. That's again areas in Pegwell Bay that could be affected by aircraft noise. We know that aircraft will not be allowed to fly over Pegwell Bay because the CAA have told us that. You can't just for something to turn right after you've taken off. That would not be good. But there will be some noise, and again, a study is taking place about that. And just to give you a feel for this is so we're also undertaking an assessment of the visual effects of lighting at night time for people who live locally, because at night the airport is going to be brightly illuminated. What impact will that have on local residents? We need to explain that. Having lighting is not negotiable. You have to have it. And then, of course, you have to show that it's as environmentally friendly as you can possibly make it, but you've got to have it. And so on and so on. So all that work is continuing, and will continue up to the point when the DCO process examination starts in January. So that's really where we are now. I'm more than happy to accept questions if there's anything that you think I haven't explained. And I suppose just to say this, be under no illusion. There are freight forwarders and airlines and cargo operators out there who will come to Manston once we've done what we said we would do, because they have nowhere else to go. And it's all very well Gatwick saying we're going to try and find a way of getting more cargo in. Anyone who's been to Gatwick this year will know just how full they are. And the reality from most airports that have only one runway is that big cargo planes get in the way of the efficient operation of passenger planes. It's as simple as that. And there isn't anywhere else in the southeast of England that can do that. The nearest available airport really that has any serious capacity is at Doncaster, at Finningley, the old RAO Finningley. That's the only one. That does genuinely have capacity, and we freely acknowledge that. But we would say that serves the north of England, the North Midlands, and Scotland. But to serve the south of England and the London area and beyond London is a stretch. And all that does is provide, for trucks that come too far, a solution which again is environmentally not entirely satisfactory because of the distances involved. But that's basically the position that the UK faces because nothing else has been built. So, that's where we currently are. Does anyone have any questions? I'm taking it.
Thank you, Tony. Just simply on, you spoke about the education training side of things and the universities that are engaged, as you're aware, I'm working with River Oak on some of that. I just wonder if you'd like to expand on what River Oak's thoughts are on the more mature applicants applying for jobs.
Right, okay.
If you would.
Well, speaking as a mere youngster myself, I'm very prejudiced against old people. No, we are. I should have said that earlier. Actually, in the world, first of all, we have a lot of former employees who are still around and are still perfectly capable of doing a really good job. And I've said to many of them, and I'll say again publicly, we want to create a register of all those employees who may well want to return to work or return as trainers or mentors or whatever it might be. There is huge scope for them. We do not recognise retirement dates of retirement ages of 60 or 65. Absolutely not. So that's the first important step. Beyond that, no. I mean, anyone who wants to retrain to work in aviation at any age, of any gender, as long as they're hale and hearty and can do it, they're very welcome, and that will certainly be our policy. We have to have as strong a local workforce as we can get, because this is in everyone's interest. It's Thanet's airport, and it should be for Thanet's people to work in it.
There have been persistent questions that have been raised by several people at Thanet Council, notably Ian Livingston, but also by some of the no nightlights people about whether the Northern Grass really is necessary. By now you will have had some idea of the kind of abuses that you are proposing to have. I realize that it's sketchy at this point, but I'm sure that that's an area where you have greater clarity now in what you can say than what you might have been able to say in, say, January of 2018 when the last consultations took place.
Yes. Two things. First of all, the Northern Grass, the gross area of the Northern Grass is 116 acres. The Northern Grass will accommodate the radar installation, which, as some of you know, is on the top left-hand corner. Because of the clearances that are allowed, this is effectively a sterilised zone for the radar of 33 acres. So you've lost 33 acres to begin with for essential aviation use. The roads that we're planning to put in will, and the landscaping that you have to do these days, and the attenuation ponds that you've seen at the front, this is, a fancy name for drainage ponds, but they will have to look nice. The roads and the attenuation ponds will probably take another 10 acres, so that's 46 acres gone. You've then got the buildings. So what else do you want to put on there? If you look at our plan for the airport itself, that's airside, you'll see there's basically a passenger terminal and a couple of hangars that are designed for maintenance, repair. You've got the flight training school, which we hope will expand into a fixed base operation for executive jets. And then over on the other side, you've got a huge new cargo facility. That's it. There is nothing else. There's no room for anything else airside. So a lot of aviation-related functions, freight forwarders, customs agents, even people who want to pack goods that have arrived from East Africa, let's say, they don't want those to be airside. Because the problem if you work airside is you've got to be security cleared, it's a rigmarole. They would like to be close to the airport but landside. And the only landside land we have is the Northern Grass. So, and we've said this to KCC, who couldn't understand why we didn't want to road through it, but the buildings themselves, we know they'll be up to 16 metres in height, and they'll be built to standard airport specification, which includes, of course, sort of sound insulation and so on, because let's not forget, we will have employees at the airport who will want to protect them from noise and all those other things. But how many buildings there will be, and where they will be, and what size they will be, will depend on what the demand is. We want to keep it as flexible as possible. But, again, the Northern Grass is absolutely essential. Without the Northern Grass, we really can't function as an airport.
What would you conclude would be a net figure of money that would be actually in the pockets of local employees relating to direct employment at the airport? And what would you think would be a figure for a greater figure, a gross figure for East Kent? How much effect would it have on the economy?
We haven't done that calculation, to be honest with you. We haven't. All I can say to you is we have a profile of the jobs. So we're looking at a maximum of 3,000 jobs. They range from security people and grounds people and handlers to firefighters, air traffic controllers, senior management and so on. So there's a whole range of jobs. But no, we haven't. It's interesting actually. We're not obliged to show the commercial impact in that sense. We have to show the number of jobs, and it's a given that we will, the people that work for us will get paid. But if you ask me what the economic benefit for the area is, we haven't done that calculation. No, sorry.
A bit surprised that local authorities haven't been asking that one.
No, they haven't. Yeah, they haven't. They haven't. Maybe they will now. I mean, look, to be honest with you, it's a very good point, and I will tomorrow raise it with our team. We have a Monday morning conference call, and it has not been raised before, actually. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Very quickly, assuming that we're successful, as far as I'm concerned we're going to be, would operations stack automatically be dismantled if you're successful? Or would there be somebody be able to put a hole in it?
Yes, well look, there are all sorts of issues to do with operations staff, as you know. To me, this is a panic measure in case we crash out of the European Union with no plan, and that looks increasingly unlikely. There are other issues which no one has considered. The airport, as you know, sits on top of an aquifer.
Yeah.
I don't know whether the Secretary of State for Transport has considered the effect of 4,500 trucks coming in from various parts of Europe with all the diesel in their tanks and all the risk of spillage and so on, and what would happen if there was an environmental event. Very difficult to control 4,500 trucks on one airfield when they're coming in and then going out the next morning. And frankly, if this had been dealt with in a calm and measured way, research would have been required. You know, the kind of work that we've had to do to show the impact of the airport. The kind of work that Stonewall Parker asked.
It keeps popping up on the news.
I agree. And I mean, the current position is we understand the Department for Transport is negotiating with the present owners a short-term tenancy agreement to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
The Secretary of State has mentioned it. Sir Roger Gale has spoken to the Secretary of State, who's given a private undertaking that if they do any damage to the airfield, that the government will pay to put it right. But if you ask me, well, what if they need Operation Stack for the next 5 years and that stops the airport from starting, I can't give you an answer except to say that would be absolutely insane. The thought that you've got 5,000 trucks coming into this area every day, it just beggars belief that could happen. You have to assume that common sense will prevail at some point.
Well, they've never used it yet, but they keep, as I say, keep popping up.
Well, I know.
Sorry.
Okay.
Hasn't we done any comparisons as to the costs and the environmental impact of running the airport as against possible environmental impact of 4,000 houses being built out? I mean, we've got 4,000 houses, 4,000 cars going in and out, 4,000 delivery lorries and God knows what else going in and out of there. Has anybody done a comparison as to the environmental impact of those houses?
No. David Stevens is the expert on this, really.
Listen, done some calculation.
Yes, but my point is that the application should have been supported by studies investigating that and showing what was going to happen. It has not. The application has been delayed and delayed and delayed. Supporting information has never been provided. And so the work hasn't been done. So your guess is as good as mine. Our experts tell me that I think the latest was 3,700 houses, which probably represents about 10,000 people, human beings, and never mind the cars and so on. You've got the aquifer underneath and, picking my words carefully, all that human waste being produced. What's going to happen to all that? I don't know. And they haven't told us.
They've got a huge problem in Shepway at the moment. I was reading it this morning. With sewage coming back up.
Well, airports don't produce that much, thankfully. And this is maybe not a subject for Sunday lunch, but draining the tanks of aircraft is a very, very strictly controlled business, under the CAA regulations, and that material leaves the site. It doesn't stay on the site.
It's true.
Just going back to this gentleman's point there, I mean, it's clear that neither the government nor the county council at the moment, and I'm sure Paul is around, Paul's here somewhere, Paul will know some of this information better than I at district level, but it's clear that neither the government nor the county council have yet decided exactly what's going to happen with Operation Stack. But I get the feeling from the information that we have that the Manston Airport site is not being looked at as a permanent solution even for the next 5 years, because they're looking at the possibility of Detling Hill, the possibility of contraflow systems on the M20, as well as there's been a site talked about near Folkestone. That they are looking at other areas to try and break up the traffic flow and to feed it more gently to where it's got to go, rather than simply blocking it up on an airfield site, which clearly needs to be an airfield. And with regard to the other point, the latest piece of information I've been able to find on TDC's website concerning outlying planning permission for accommodation and housing units from Southern Water still says that they are not happy at all with a conurbation like that on that site, because they say not only can the aquifer, it can't support it, but they do not have either the facility or the money to provide the infrastructure for the removal of waste and so on. And that was late November 2017. And as far as I'm aware, there haven't been any changes to their position on that. But it's always worth going on to the Thanet District Council website, because if you type in the outline planning information numbers, it'll give you all the documents and all the letters associated with any application that has been, is being considered or made.
If I can put it this way, my understanding of the planning process is that if you are asked to provide a supporting report to support your application and you fail to do so, you run the risk of the application being taken to the committee and the application being refused. Why that hasn't happened, I don't know. Someone will know the answer, but I don't. And just to say, the other contradiction which I should have said was this: when we were accepted in August for examination, officially the position is that the Secretary of State has accepted that the Manston Airport project is a nationally significant infrastructure project. So that's why we are now at a much more credible level than we were before. which of course conflicts with another part of the DFT that's scrambling around to try and provide Operation Stack, or it's now called Operation Brock. I understand.
Operation Brock. But it shows they are looking at other sites.
Yes.
Because they must have at least a suspicion that the Manston site is not going to be there.
Yes, yeah, let's hope so. And let's hope that someone has actually mentioned the aquifer and diesel and trucks.
Any more questions?
Well, thank you very much for your line. I've gone on a long time. Sorry. Thank you very much for coming to listening. I don't think there's going to be another meeting this side of Christmas, is there?
That's a right, no, I don't know.
But whatever, you know, if I don't see you before, I wish you a very, very happy Christmas, all of you. And once again, thank you for your support. You were with us at the beginning of this journey. You're with us now. We're almost at the end. And I'm sure you'll be with us in a year's time when we have the biggest celebration that is ever seen.
Thank you, Tony. Very helpful indeed. Go away and think of that. There will be a video, I believe, if it's recorded okay. Before you go, one more thing. As you know, SNAA submitted to the Planning Inspectorate our application to submit in the when the examination starts. We sent, as you will know, some of you will know, on SNAA webpage there was a poll. It got up to 66 replies. The last I looked at it was up to nearly 600 people ticking some of the options. That will go to the Planning Inspectorate. I need to find out when it's the best time to submit it. But there is still time now. It is pointed to by the pinned post on the top of SMAA, and I will boost it up to the top. And if you haven't yet entered, or if you have more thoughts, or more options you want to tick, you can tick as many as you want. Reasons why you want Manston back. That's what the Planning Inspectorate wants to know. And please tick the ones you do support, and I will make sure that gets to the Planning Inspectorate. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you all have a good Christmas.